Hi, are you looking to buy a pair of running sneakers, but you're not really sure how to go about that? This series is perfect for you because I'm going to go over what to look for when you're buying a pair of running shoes. And I'm breaking it up into three-part series because I'm going to talk about supination, and in this video we're going to specifically talk about pronation and then a neutral foot. So, and what those are, what the actual definitions, what they are, what shoes that people who have that particular type of foot, what they tend to like to buy, and then maybe why they should try buying something different, like what the benefits are and all those things. And then in addition to that, other things to look for in a sneaker so that you are making sure you maximize your purchase. All right, so let's get started. What is pronation? Pronation really means that you have a very floppy foot. You may already know that. Sorry if that's news. It just means that your foot bends a lot. And this isn't good or bad. Lots of people are flat-footed and they have absolutely no problems. People supinate their whole life pronate through their whole life and have no problems. But when you're gonna run, a lot of times it's much better for you if you buy a shoe that's gonna help adapt your foot so that you have a little bit more structure. But let me back up a bit. I think I got ahead of myself. We're gonna talk about, I'm gonna show you what a pronated foot does. So with my wonderful little foot here, again, this is a right foot. And so you have your pinky toe, you have a big toe, and you have that middle arch. Now, for people who pronate, it does vary a bit, right? So some people who pronate do not hit the outside of their heel at all. They completely bypass anything on the outside of their foot. For some people, when they pronate, they really hit on the inside and they just stay on the inside. And for some people, what happens is they hit on the outside of their heel, they hit the outside of that heel, but then they quickly get over, very quickly, they spend no time on the outside of their foot, they just jump right on in, over too early to the inside of their foot and smush down that arch and then push off of their toe. The problem comes that by coming over, by hitting the outside edge and then quickly coming over, what happens is they compress too quickly. They don't give their body the time to actually absorb the impact and then recoil. They really just smush right over, and because it's your foot so flexible that you then bend normally at this very odd angle. Now it varies. So what I'm trying to get is that this is where bunions come from. That's what I'm attempting to point out, is that when you come over too quickly, you come at this angle on an in angle versus straight forward. And that adds extra pressure because you've rolled all the way in to the inside of this arch. You're adding pressure to the outside of that bone here, which then can cause your big toe to come inward, pointing towards the second toe. And then you're really pivoting, not even on the bottom side of that big toe, but on the outside of that big toe. And then that's where a lot of people have problems. And that's how you develop bunions. That's how, honestly, this is where plantar fasciitis comes from, because you've now overstretched all the ligaments and muscles on the bottom side of the foot, because this whole arch just gets smushed. And so again, there's some varying amounts of pronation. Some people slightly pronate, some people are just completely flat-footed. But overall, what it means is that if you're pronating, that your foot is a little bit more flexible, or a lot more flexible than it should be. And it's allowing your foot to move in ways that and actually when you're running, it causes you to lose a lot of force production, right? Because your foot smushes so much, there's no recoil, there's no stiffness for you to bounce off of. You're just flattening your foot and losing a little bit of energy and then trying to move forward, and typically using the wrong muscles, so they're not being utilized as well as they could be if the bones and the arches were in a more ideal alignment. And this is where shoes come in. This is why it's important to make sure that you buy a shoe that will help accommodate for that. really what you're looking for is one that's going to give the inside of your, so by the inside, I mean like where the arch is, a little bit more structure so you can't just fully come on over. And what it typically, I mean, they're all made a little bit different, but they'll just build up either the inside of where the heel is, so your heel can't come in, or the inside where the whole foot, the midfoot and toe box are, so you really just can't roll over. You have to then either come a little bit out or go straight forward. Depends on the maker on how they do all of that. But for somebody who is flat-footed or has a very flexible foot, the change in buying a shoe that they typically buy, which is one that has no structure to it. Normally you can, I'll get somebody who has a pretty significant pronation situation happening and their whole shoe bends. It might as well be a ballet slipper, like an actual ballet slipper. There's no structure to that shoe at all because they don't like the structure, because their foot wants to be able to do what it wants to do. And who likes to be told what to do? You don't want your shoe telling you where to move. You want your shoe just to do what it is that you want it to do. You want it to bend wherever your foot wants to bend. You don't want to get any of that restriction. And I can appreciate that. Who likes to deal with rules? But if you're trying to run, you really don't want your foot just to be able to splay, completely roll in, and do everything that it naturally wants to do, because that over time is going to wear down. It's either going to cause plantar fasciitis. It actually can stress out your Achilles tendon. It stresses out knees. A lot of times that's why people have like the inside knee pain, is because when they pronate, they put a lot of stress on that inside knee. And then we can get into hip problems and IT band problems, all caused from how your foot hits the ground. So I will stress that, especially if you pronate, it is a good idea to find a shoe that will help accommodate that. I also have other suggestion. Obviously, I'm a physical therapist. I think you should work with somebody to help create a little bit more balance. But again, not in this video. I'm not gonna harp on that. Just the idea that if you give your foot more structure, it's going to help you have better performance while you're running, and less likelihood of long-term injuries coming forward. So you're going to want a shoe where if you picked it up, that it would only bend at the toe box. Let me see if I can give you an example of that. Good. So here is the shoe that I'm wearing, obviously, and see how it just naturally bends at that toe box. There is a little bit of give, but it's not, I'm certainly not going to be able just to bend it in half, which is what I would not suggest for you. I would not suggest you go buy a shoe that if you bent it in half, it would bend at basically anywhere along the arch of your foot, or so from your heel to your to the ball of your foot. You really just want it to where your toes would be and where they should be bending. That's where you want your shoe to bend, and that allows you to have a little bit more of that structure that you need. You don't want your shoe to just be able to twist and turn. If it was wet, you wouldn't want to be able to wring your shoe out. And there are sneakers that you can do that too. And for somebody who pronates, it's just not ideal, because you really do need to get some structure from your shoe. So the other thing to do with shoes in terms of just generally how they fit, now that we've talked about the type of shoe that you would prefer and or would be better, maybe you wouldn't prefer them because they take a little time to adjust to, but that would be better for you. But the other things to consider is that the lacing in the shoe is actually part of the support. And so I just violated my own rule because I just slid my own shoe off, but I'll have to untie it to put it back on. So if you do not retie your shoe, right, if you just slide them on and off, and you'll stretch out the actual structure and the stability that you get from the shoe. And if you can slide your foot in and out, it's not as supportive as it could be if you were having to retie your shoe. So that's why I always suggest that you should basically untie the knot, open it up, and then when you're going to put it back on, you relace it, and that way you get all the support from it, especially if you're going to go on a run. So proper support. If you're looking for what size, you really want to be able to put your thumb between your longest toe and the front of the shoe. So what that looked like on my little skeleton foot is, in this case, the second toe is the longest, right? So you would shove your thumb down. And now if you're just running 5 miles or less at a time, then I would say that it's perfectly reasonable for you just to buy the sneaker that has just that amount of room in it. And what that does is that prevents that every time you decelerate, you don't jam your toes. You have a little bit of that room for deceleration. Another reason to fully lace your shoes so that your foot is actually staying in place and not just sloshing all over the place. So making sure you have that. If you are going to run more marathon distances and things of that nature, then I would suggest you going up a full half a size in the shoe. So those two things, and then the whole concept of the absorption and the support that you get from that shoe. They have come up with amazing things. I'm just always amazed that they can come up with devices that do these things. But really, as you run, over time, the support kind of dampens, because there is supposed to be a little bit of like recoiling or like reabsorption when the weight of your foot is not on the arch support. But to get that full recovery, it needs about 24 hours, which means that if you're going to run daily, you need to invest in 2 different shoes so you can alternate them so that you get the most out of the support that you've purchased from that shoe. And so those are the big things I'd like to hit on for pronation. So just as a short recap, if you pronate, it means that your foot is very flexible. So really what you want to get from your shoe is more structure so that you have the ability to properly use the muscles in your feet. You're not overstretching your ligaments, and it helps reduce the strain of your foot, knee, and hips as you're running. Especially the longer the distance, the more apt you are to have an injury if your foot is just going all over the place, right? So when you're buying the shoe, you want to make sure that you have enough room for your toes and that you can just put your thumb in the front of the longest toe so that you have the ability to decelerate or slow down without jamming your toes into the shoe. And you also want to have enough space in there if you're doing really long runs to allow your foot to swell during that time without, I mean, you can cut off circulation, you can just be uncomfortable, you can cause blisters. There's all sorts of reasons that you don't want to have your foot be too smushed inside your shoe for longer distances. And then if you're running daily, you want to make sure that you're going to get the maximum out of the shoe that you've purchased. So you want all of the arch support to come back, so all the insert to reabsorb back into its original state, and that takes about 24 hours. So I hope that you find this information helpful, and I wish you the best luck with your next pair of sneakers. Bye.